Two favourites for the race, Ethiopia and Kenya, out to the far right-hand side of the picture in stalls number 1 and 2. The runners from each country line up in separate stalls with the fastest runner at the top of the field, and the remaining members of the team line up, as it were, in Indian fashion behind them.
Once again, attention please. Run towards the final.
It really is a very frantic moment at the start of these cross-country championship races. The rope will drop, the horn will sound, and this field of 100 young men, all of them under the age of 20, are off down the back straight on the first of 3 3/4 laps on this 8,000-metre journey for the World Junior Cross-Country Championship title. Remember, this is a team race. It's not an individual race. It's principally a teams event, and so the runners are trying to run as teams so they can help each other. They do 3 3/4 laps, which means they'll run through the famous Ellerslie Hill times, and the hill is about 558 metres away from the start, and they're making their way to the hill at the moment, and as expected, it's the Kenyans and the Ethiopians who are very much at the top of the field. It looks like number 62, who's leading the field at the moment. Number 57, the Kenyan, who's taken over as they approach the hill for the first time, who is William Koskei, the young man who won the Kenyan Junior Cross-Country Trial and one of the favourites for this race.
So this is typically a start in a World Cross-Country Championships, and remember there's only 100 runners here. In the men's race there's going to be double this number, and it's a frantic effort to get to this bottom of this hill. One thing the athletes have to watch out for is overcommitment in this first 400 or 500 metres, because the hill will take its toll of people. Perhaps not this time, but certainly the second. But just look at the mass of Africans that have gone to the front of this race already. It's a big grudge match between Kenya and Ethiopia. Last year, the Kenyans lost by 1 point to the Ethiopians. This sure they're out to reverse that very narrow loss.
Coming into the hill for the first time. This is the really tough section of the course. It's a sharp, steep climb. It climbs 100 metres in the space, 11 metres in the space of 100 metres, so it has a gradient of about 1 in 10, and number 21, the Ethiopian, Kibret, leads the field up the hill for the first time, but he's followed by a whole flank of Kenyan athletes. They're in the all red, and there's a couple of the New Zealanders buried in the middle of the pack as they make their way up the hill, and then along the ridge for a further 200 metres at the top of the hill before they do a sharp right-hand turn and descend back onto the flat. This is where they leave the top of the Ellerslie Hill, and the cross still on the grass. It's all downhill now, back onto the flat and into what is known as the long home straight, which takes them down past the finish line for the first time. You can see that leading bunch of 10 runners completely dominated by Kenyans. Number 57, William Koskei, who was 4th in this race last year. Number 59, Alphonse Muindi. And number 56, the man who won it last year, 18-year-old Oyandi Karoshi. There he is, number 56, right in the middle of this leading bunch, the defending champion, just 18 years of age.
And you can see Karoshi looking around to see if his teammates are doing well. And this is what this cross-country event is about, team running. And just look at the dominance of the red of Kenya here already.
And in the red and the green, that's the national colours of Ethiopia. There's 3 Ethiopians in that field, along with number 81, Juan Abad from Spain. He's the only runner in that leading bunch who's not from either Ethiopia or Kenya. And so the pattern that we saw in this race last year has quickly re-established itself. 9 of the first 10 finishers at Warsaw in this race last year were either Ethiopians or Kenyans. And it's a similar sort of look about the field already into the first 1 kilometre of the 1988 race. That's Juan Abad, number 81 from Spain, out to the right, running with the 4 Kenyans and 3 Ethiopians. As the field makes their way across the bottom of the course, they're back onto the flat, and now they enter into this long straight which takes them down past the grandstands and the finish line, which is about 500 metres away from where they are at the moment, and then they'll have a further 3 complete laps, or 6 kilometres of the race to go.
But don't believe that this home straight is flat all the way. It's a gradual uphill, and it's going to be taking it out of the runners very hard. Here they come to the first hurdle.
That's one of the 2. Owanda Karanchi making his way down the final downhill section of the course. Number 56, he's got a 10-metre gap over his compatriot Nditi on this lap. Kenya first, second and third, and in fourth place at the moment, number 21, is Baduli Kibret from Ethiopia. But it's the Kenyans that have completely dominated this race from start to finish. They ran as a contingent of 6 for the first 2.5 laps, and then a very fast third lap by Karachi split open the Kenyans, and really only number 60, Ndeti, has been able to stay with them. This young, powerful 18-year-old from Kenya, who I suspect may well be back in New Zealand in 2 years' time competing at the Commonwealth Games. And it looks like it's pretty gusty down there at the bottom of the course as well.
Alphonse Mwindi going through for Kenya, and number 21, Baduli Kibret, who was 8th last year. Not happy at all, I'm sure, with his performance, hoping to be up there with the leading Kenyan, but not matching it today.
Karachi, who's come down from the still clear air of 8,000 feet on the high plains of Africa onto the humidity of the Ellerslie racecourse here in Auckland, but it doesn't seem to have caused him any problems at all.
But I think he's a little worried about that man, Ndeti behind him. He's looking around, and Ndeti has been hanging on well.
And psychologically, it's a very tough finishing straight here at Ellerslie. Not only is it uphill, albeit rather gradually, it is so long that when he turns around that little corner and looks straight down at the finish line, it must seem an eternity away.
It's a long, long straight, and we know that racehorses find it pretty tough at times. For these guys who are coming in, completing 8 kilometres of this course, this is really tough running, but great running by the Kenyan team.
And Ndeti is absolutely delighted with his second place at the moment as he throws his hands in the air, still 400 metres from home. I guess he figures there's no way he can catch the defending champion, Karachi, who just looked a little soft on the hill, but he seems to have regained some of his composure, and he's widened that gap again, but he still has the best 100 metres of the race to go. It's Kenya first and second.
Tremendous bounce this man gets out of his running. Just look at him, he gets right off the ground, uses his arms well. He's tired, he's wobbling around with his head. It's been a great run, an excellent run by this young man from Kenya, showing just what Africans can do when it comes to cross-country running.
First in 1987 in Warsaw, and first again in Auckland in 1988. Owandi Karanchi, 18 years of age, and world junior cross-country champion for another 12 months. 23 minutes and 24 seconds for the 8,000-metre journey. Ndeti, his compatriot, comes home in second place. Kenya first and second. And they also take home third place. And in fourth place, it's Kibret, number 21 from Ethiopia. And yet another Kenyan in fifth place, and yet another in sixth place. An absolutely staggering performance by the Kenyan team, who've completely demolished this field and assured themselves of winning the men's junior title. They've been second for the past 3 years behind the Ethiopians, but no question about it, 1988, they are the world champions. And here comes the first New Zealander, Ross Wilson, as expected, the fastest in the New Zealand team, but he's only got a couple of metres. And it's a big sprint coming from Ross Wilson, and he does get another place right on the line. Probably finished John Davies in about 30th place.
I think he was in the top 30. Excellent running. He's run 30 minutes 20. There's Richard Lindros, who's just behind him, number 71.
That's 2 New Zealanders coming home in the space of 5 or 6 seconds.
And this is the problem you can see at the finish of these races. It's important that the athletes finishing order. When you have somebody that's out sick like one of the fellows there, the officials have to remember where he's come in the race. So somebody else has taken his number off him and is standing in his place in the queue to record his position.
I think there's another couple of New Zealanders making their way down. Yes, we can see the black top.
That's Michael Johnson from Dunedin coming in now.
Number 69.
Jeremy Forbes, who started so well, but it probably was a little bit quick for him.
That's Jeremy Ford's number 68. So we've seen 4 of the New Zealanders home. They will be the 4 that count. It's place points that count. If you finish 9th, you get 9 points. If you finish 29th, you get 29. The first 4 finishes are added together, and that gives you a team's total.
And there they are, the winners of the juniors event. Owandi Karachi of Kenya, who was so superior in taking out the men's junior event. Congratulations to him, but more especially congratulations to Kenya. An absolutely amazing performance to dominate that event so much. We'll be back with what could be one of the most race of the day. The women's will run. They will run very shortly. Names of Sargent of France, Dubuque, I can mention Bondarenko, I can mention Mary O'Connor from New Zealand, but there's one name that truly dominates this women's event, and her name is Ingrid Kristiansen from Norway. She is the best runner in the world, the best woman runner in the world at the moment, and she takes her place in an event that she has yet to win. Well, joining me is a pioneer in women's distance running, Catherine Schwitzer. She has already won 35 marathons herself. She knows what it's all about. Catherine, is Kristiansen well poised to add this crown to her many others?
Phil, you have to remember that Ingrid Kristiansen is virtually the Paavo Nurmi of women's distance running. She holds world records at 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 15,000, and the marathon distance. But she's never won this race in 4 attempts. Last year, Annette Sergent from France came through the field and beat Kristiansen as well as a world-class field as a virtual unknown. She's not an unknown anymore now, and Annette Sergent is back to defend her title this year and give Kristiansen a great challenge. Also, Lynn Jennings from the United States we have to look at very strongly, and Olga Bondarenko. So Ingrid Kristiansen's going to have her work cut out for her today.
Well, you've mentioned 5 or 6 individuals. However, this is a teams event. Does that mean that Norway is well poised to add the team's crown, or who should we look for?
Sure, look for Norway, but really on paper you'd have to say the Soviet Union is favored, but my favorite is going to be the United States, not just because I'm an American, but because they have so much experience in both road running and this cross-country race. They're the winningest team in the world cross-countries for women.
What about New Zealand's prospects?
Well, I've got good news and bad news about New Zealand. The good news is we have a good, solid team in New Zealand. They're led by the 2 Chris's, Chris Pfitzinger and Chris McMicken, who's been training in the United States. Chrissy Pfitzinger from Hamilton and Wellesley, Massachusetts, just qualified for the Olympics in the 3,000 meters, and she's been training out here in Cornwall Park, and she's really ready to go. Chris McMicken is hot in the 10,000. I think she will lead the team in. The bad news is, though, and due to some women deciding to train for the Olympic Games back in the United States, the team is not as tough as it could be, but they're going to be solid.
Catherine Schwitzer with comments there on the women's event, which is about to begin. We hope you'll enjoy it. I'm sure you will, because you'll listen to Catherine Schwitzer's commentary, as well, of course, as Brendan Toffer, who's about to introduce the athletes.
5 minutes, the start time.
And this is the start of the back straight at Ellerslie, known as the 1,600 metre mark, which is converted into a human stall today for the start of the 3 races. It's the same starting place for each of the 3 races. The women's race, which has 144 starters from 32 countries, including the defending champions, the United States and France, who finished 2nd last year, and the Russians, and of course the New Zealanders as well. And there we see Mary O'Connor just running through shot, wearing the New Zealand strip. New Zealand, who had a disappointing time at these championships last year when they only finished 11th, and I'm sure Roger Robinson, the New Zealand team realistically should be looking for a top 6 finish here this.
Attention please, for your own sake, please do not stop dead after the finishing line. Continue running towards the funnel.
We're looking at present at the Kenyan team, which is a very young one, Brendan. But we've already seen that young Kenyan runners are certainly not to be underrated from the way they dominated the junior race. These young Kenyan women go down to 14 years old. We're looking now at a much more experienced team. On the left, the British. And we're looking at present at the Italians, one of the not such a strong team in the women's race, though they're certainly going to shape up very well in the men. One of the Tooby twins, number 44, Angela Tooby has finished 6th in this race, and her sister Susan is also her twin sister Susan is also a very strong runner. You can see her just behind as we're moving in on the Tooby twins, the 2 leading British runners, with Jill Hunter, who is 2nd in their trial, just visible over the shoulder with a 3:53 her number. The British team must be one of the favourites for this race, along probably with the Americans and the Russians.
This is the Ellerslie racecourse, what it looks like from the top of One Tree Hill. Let's just have a look at the course on an animated map before the race starts. The course for the women's race consists of a lap 2 kilometres in length. The runners will do 2 3/4 laps, and there's one hill section which these runners will cover 3 times, and it comes 600 metres after the start. It's the famous Ellerslie Hill, as it's known. It rises sharply 11 metres in the space of 100 metres. And the course then takes the runners along a ridge for another 200 metres before a sharp twisting descent brings them back to the flat. And the flat is deceptive as well, because the home straight is a gradual climb all the way to the finish line. It's a very fast, a very flat, and a very well received course. The athletes who've been here this week have spoken very highly of it. Roger Robinson has run it. What do you think of it?
Athletes have been saying that it's a deceptive course. So the great John Tracy said that it was searching. Ingrid Kristiansen, I haven't heard her comment on it, though it's certainly a very fine course for her. She's a fast runner, and this fast underfoot grass will suit her quite well as a specialist road runner. You can see that the runners have to be arranged in pens by their countries, and they're standing there with the leading runners from each country to the front, and the others, the lesser ones, in behind them. They can usually get 2 or 3 in a line at the front. And this is the time, Brendan, when before the start of a race, the tension is really building up. You're looking over the shoulder of the lead runner in your team. You can see the course spread out in front of you, and you're aware, of course, of great runners edging, nuzzling on both sides of you.
The starting marshals giving this field of 144 their starting instructions. It's rather like a horse race. They put them into the stalls and they don't let them go until everyone is settled down and literally ready to jump. And it really is a very frantic start. And the runners at the back of the pens feel disadvantaged, and there's an inevitable desire to run very fast from the gun to try and catch up with those runners who are first out of the blocks. There is a maximum of 6 runners in each team, and it's the first 4 finishes that count. And it's very important to realize this is principally a team's event. These runners are running for their country first of all, so they like to run together to try and help each other to get as many high finishes as they can. It's the first 4 finishes that count.
I'll give it 10 seconds. 15.
Because of the pens, Brendan, it's not quite such a high-pressure start as before one of the major marathons in the world. They are separated from each other a little, and one of the great advantages of this course is that it's a very wide one.
Ready for a start in the 1988 World Women's Cross Country Championships.
At the finishing line. On your left.
It is always a magnificent sight. Charge of the Light Brigade as the runners set off down this long back straight, which takes them into the Ellerslie Hill, which is about 500 metres away from where they are at the moment. Conditions here could not be better in Ellerslie this afternoon. It's about 20 degrees, and probably for the first time ever, the World Cross Country Championships have been run in summery conditions. Traditionally, this race is run at the end of the European winter. It's often very cold. There's often snow and mud and slush on the ground, but it's a real summery day here in Auckland this afternoon as the field makes their way down the back straight for the first time. It's a journey of 5,962 metres, and as expected already, Ingrid Kristiansen, along with Angela Tooby, number 54, the leading British runner, quick to the fore, as well as the Kenyans, number 90 and 87. That's Surma, number 90 and 17-year-old Margaret Nagoto.
And also up there, of course, was Olga Bondarenko. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see her in the red from the Soviet Union. She's one of the fastest women in the 10,000 meters and ran very well in the World Championships this year also.
The start is so unpredictable, partly because we've got a mixture of complete novices, like some 12 and 14-year-old girls from Zambia and Kenya, right up to the immense experience of Ingrid Kristiansen, and, for instance, Portugal's Montserrat Abello, who's running in this race for the 14th time. Nothing significant happens in the first few hundred meters, but as they reach this hill, they'll be sorting themselves out, and we'll really begin to get some picture of the pattern of the race.
But Roger, it's interesting that the 4 Kenyans have gone out just like they did in the juniors race, and among those women are Jane Nagotho and Margaret Nagotho, both sisters, and they go by the name also of Wairimu, which is their family name.
And one of them placed quite highly in this race under the name of Wairimu last year. I think she was in 12th.
That's right.
So the women coming into the hill for the first time, they will run this hill 3 times, 2 3/4 laps for the 6,000-metre journey. The distance this year is about 1,000 metres longer than it was last year, which I imagine Catherine will certainly play into the hands of a strong runner like Ingrid Kristiansen. She certainly won't mind that extra 1,000 metres, I imagine.
No, I think that the lengthening of the course to 6,000 metres is going to be very much to Ingrid's advantage here. One thing about the start, Brendan, is that every single woman that I talked to this week said the start is so much faster than anyone can imagine, and how important the start is. It is important not, of course, to go into oxygen debt, but you can't afford to get too far behind to lose place because you can't make it up.
So they've left the top of the hill for the first time, and it looks like Angela Tooby, number 54. There she is, the woman that we remember from the 10,000 metres at the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh in 1986 when she won the bronze medal behind Liz Lynch and New Zealand's Anne Ordain, who fought out that epic battle for the gold. rather out of the limelight, but very much in medal contention, finished with the bronze, was Angela Tooby, who's leading the field down the downhill section for the first time.
And Brendan, this illustrates one important thing about cross-country running. Everybody's been talking about the hill and meaning the uphill, but it's equally important in cross-country running to be able to run fast downhill, and very often that's the place when you can actually put a brake on the field. If a runner can really keep his or her stride speed on the downhills, you can move away and not overstretch and in fact hold yourself back.
So we're looking for the first New Zealander, which is rather like trying to find a human needle in a haystack there. I have a feeling it may well be Mary O'Connor. I saw the tiny frame of Mary O'Connor threading her way through that massive bunch of flesh as they twist their way through the bottom of the course. Lesley Graham there as well, who won the trial here on this course for the New Zealand team a month ago.
And Barbara Moore was well up there, and as they came over the hill, I saw that they were running, in fact, in quite a group, which is very sensible on the New Zealanders' part. In this group, we've got at least 3 British runners. You can see both the Tooby twins, and I think it's Jill Hunter behind.
Yes, number 53, Jill Hunter. So this is a good start by Britain.
But let me point out number 24 in the middle of your screen. I mentioned unknowns in my introductory remarks, and that is Brenda Shackleton from Canada. Nobody's heard of Brenda Shackleton, but she won her cross-country trials for this race going away and beat a world-class field in Canada. So she might be a real dark horse to watch out for.
So they're back onto the flat and into the home straight for the first time, and it's Angela Tooby, the Welsh cross-country champion for many years and leading the British team, and the Kenyans, who started off at that very hectic pace, but that hill for the first time seems to have sapped some of the energy from the Kenyan women. That's the first of the 2 hurdles. It's an interesting aspect of the course in 1987 is the absence of hurdles on this course. There's just the 2 of them. Last year at the World Championships in Warsaw, there were 13 hurdles on the course. This year, this is rather strange, Roger.
Yes, this, I think, is the least number of hurdles that I've ever seen on a World Championship course. Certainly on the 2 occasions that I've run it, it's always been a real problem getting over quite high hurdles, and far more numerously than there are here.
Well,
these
Roger,
are just little log jumps, which I think are just 65 centimeters high.
That's right. When Roger and I were out running on this course, Brendan, we went over those, and they were absolutely no difficulty even for us. I noticed that Ingrid Kristiansen now in 3rd place on the right of the screen is moving up, although Angela Tooby is leading this race.
I think this is going to be a race of experience. We've seen that, unlike in the junior race, the Kenyans haven't managed to hold their front position. I said as they went up the start that experience would tell, and already we've got 2 of the most experienced runners, Angela Tooby and now Ingrid Kristiansen, who's in full camera there in 2nd place, leading this field.
In 3rd place is Susan Sirma from Kenya. She is the oldest of the Kenyan delegation at age 21, and I was told by her coach that she is the best runner they have right now. To have a runner in Kenya who is 21 because most of the runners are early age because they're just getting running programs really there started for women.
And as they go past the start-finish line, it is Mary O'Connor who is buried in that bunch. She is the leading New Zealander. She's probably in about 30th place at the moment, and about 10 or 15 metres behind her there are 2 or 3 other members of the New Zealand team. But it's early days yet, just 2 kilometres of the journey gone, with still the best part of 4 kilometres to go. It's still Angela Tooby leading from this remarkable athlete, Ingrid Kristiansen. And down there on the start-finish line is John Davies with Philip Leishman, who got a very graphic view of the field as they came past. Phil.
What did you think, John Davies, when you saw those leading runners?
A lot of people going very hard, and there's a lot of hard breathing going on out there. It's absolutely tremendous. Tooby's look good, the English team looks good. Disappointed with the New Zealand team start.
Why are they so far back, do you think, this week?
Don't understand it. I mean, we've got some pretty fast ladies in there, and they're not running as a team. Our lady that won our trial, Graham, is well back off the field. And Christine McMeekin is the first New Zealander in about, I would say, 25th place.
Well, that's how John Davies sees it from down near the finish line.
Meanwhile, the leading runners making their way down the back straight for the 2nd time, having completed 1 full lap, or just over 2,000 metres, with 4 Ks of this journey to go. And it's number 54, Angela Tooby, this 27-year-old, leading the British team. An interesting point about Britain is this is the first time at these World Championships that Britain is running as Britain. Traditionally, up until now, and in the days when Roger Robinson ran, they were in fact separate countries: England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But this year, for the first time, it's been something of a controversial move also, hasn't it, Roger, in British cross-country circles, the decision to combine the team into one composite team.
Interestingly, talking to the British athletes this week, it seemed to be the younger ones, the juniors, who were most pleased about it. The older ones, I suppose, being slightly more would have preferred probably to continue to compete for their home countries, as they're called. In the case of Angela Tooby, who's now leading this field, number 54, that was Wales. And it was the red singlet of Wales that she wore when she finished 6th in this race 3 years ago. She's being followed now and hounded very closely by the great and very experienced Ingrid Kristiansen, who Catherine knows very well.
And in fact, Roger, Ingrid Kristiansen is now making her move to take the lead. I'd like your opinions on whether this is too soon, but I think that she wants to break clear, because my experience with Ingrid is that once she gets away from the field, she can run well, and she does not run well when she's pressured.
I regard Ingrid as being a runner rather in the mould of the great Dave Bedford, the English runner. She's absolutely superb if she can get out on her own. But she's sometimes can cave in under pressure, as we saw when Joan Benoit put it on her in both the Olympic Marathon and in the Chicago Marathon. And 1 or 2 road races, which Catherine and I have seen in the States, Ingrid is susceptible when somebody really goes with her. And also, of course, very much in her mind will be the race last year, when she thought the race was between her and Yvonne Murray of Scotland, as it was then, and then right through at the finish, to her own astonishment, as well as everybody else's, came Annette Sergent of France. Sergent has been injured around about Christmas time. We haven't seen her as a force in this race as yet.
So that's the first New Zealander, number 99, Christine McMeekin, an athlete we don't see much of in New Zealand because she's at Oklahoma State University, where she's been for the last 3 or 4 years. She was New Zealand's top finisher the last time she ran at the World Championships 2 years ago. She did not run in Warsaw last year, but she's back in the New Zealand team this year, and she is our leading runner, probably in about 25th to 30th place, just ahead of Mary O'Connor, as they make their way across the top of the hill for the second time. But it's Ingrid Kristiansen looking for her first World Championship title. She's figured in the finishes over the last 4 or 5 years, but has never been able to close out one and win it. She's as well prepared in 1988 as she's ever been, and she's hit the front of the field halfway through this race.
If she does win it, Brenda, she'll do something absolutely unique, because only 6 in Adelaide, she won the World Championship road distance, 15 kilometre. So to win 2 events in just within 6 days. I suppose she must be finding the temperature slightly different from her home Norway, because she seems to be wearing gloves. Nobody would be quite sure exactly why. Catherine may have an idea on this, but she knows Ingrid very well.
Yes, Ingrid has trouble with her contact lenses, and she wears these gloves so when the sweat runs in her eyes that she can wipe the sweat away. I sympathize with that a lot running out here in New Zealand, because the sun is so bright. For contact lens wearers, it's very difficult, and that's the reason she's wearing them. And it's not cold for Ingrid. And Roger, look at this, Angela Tooby coming back up, not giving up on Ingrid Kristiansen. This is what Ingrid does not like. Ingrid likes to break away. She doesn't like to be hounded. Ingrid runs at home on a treadmill a lot of the time, if you can imagine that. She puts a mirror up in front of her, and she runs 15 and 20 miles at a stretch on this, surrounded by posters of Joan Benoit as well. Joan is a bit of her nemesis in the United States, because Ingrid has not yet been able to break that magic 2-hour, 20-minute barrier in the marathon, and she feels it's the last great barrier she has to go. She's coming to London, in fact, to try to do that. 32 years of age, Ingrid Kristiansen from Norway. Was 6th in the World Cross Country Championships in 1982, and as we've mentioned before, you can see there she's had 4 goes at the World Cross Country Championships and never done better than a bronze.
And the other unique thing that you can see about Ingrid Kristiansen on those stats is that she is the only athlete ever to have, in either sex, to have held the world record simultaneously for the 5,000, 10,000 meters and the marathon. It looks as if she's going to add not only the 15K road title, but the cross-country title to that. Ingrid Kristiansen leads the field.
Coming into the home straight with just over 1 full lap to go. It's Ingrid Kristiansen, and there she is with that familiar contorted, grimaced look on her face. It's almost the trademark of Ingrid Kristiansen, and when you look at her, Catherine, you think this woman must be in some... But I don't think she is.
You know, she hates the way her face looks. She said to me many times, everybody thinks I hate running and I'm in such pain, but she loves running probably more than any other woman I've ever met. And it's just the way she squints up. Again, problems with the contact lenses. She feels she has to wear the lenses to race well.
And concentration rather than pain, I think.
And just look at the gap that Kristiansen has opened up over the field, and only Angela Tooby, the 27-year-old Welsh woman, has been able to stay with the formidable, the awesome Ingrid Kristiansen. And in the main bunch of runners, about 30 metres behind them, is Jill Hunter, the second British runner, number 53, along with 2 of the Kenyans, and also their number 134 is Yelena Romanova from the Soviet Union.
And Brendan, in that group was the defending champion Annette Sergent, wearing not the old blue uniform of France, but a white one with a blue trim.
Jill Hunter, Roger, has done very well, number 53, running running very well for England, a very young girl, but on the right, hidden behind the Kenyan, number 86 in the blue shorts and white top. There she is, Annette Sergent, the defending champion. And watch out for Annette Sergent. She is known for her very fast finish.
And we also just caught a glimpse of one of the race favourites, Lynn Jennings of the United States, running at present in about 8th or 9th place, and looking rather heavy on this course.
And the interesting point is, as we watch Christine McMeekin, that the first New Zealander, and not far behind her, the second New Zealander, Jackie Goodman, also from Oklahoma State University. But I have a feeling at the moment, Roger and Catherine, that the team's event probably is a battle between Kenya and Great Britain at the moment. There were 3 British runners in the first 20.
Yes, I know the British really hoped for a team victory in this race.
There's Barbara Moore.
One thing about the team race, though, is the New Zealanders demonstrated 2 years ago when they came right through and just failed to win it. We're just beaten by England by 1 point in a very disputed finish. In this championship, you can actually make progress in the teams race if you come through in the race. And I think that may be what the New Zealanders this time are hoping to do.
Roger, when we look at that picture of Ingrid Kristiansen, she's really laying it on now. She's opening it up. I don't think she wants to take a chance this year like last year. She knows that Annette Sergent is a fast finisher, and she knows there are other fast finishers in the field. I think she wants to make that break really clear now.
Ingrid certainly did this in the World Championship 10,000 meters last year, completely dominated it, really killed them just about the end of the first mile. And at this stage, as Catherine says, she's decided to go away. She's not going to wait for the surprise finish. She knows her strength, which is essentially one spread over the entire distance.
Well, she has about 1,500 metres of the journey left, and she's coming into the hill for the first time. And this woman who for so long has run in the shadow of her legendary compatriot Grete Waitz, but today she will, in all probability, win the one title that has eluded her for so long, which Grete Waitz herself won many times back in the 70s and the 1980s, the World Cross Country Championship title. And I'm sure an added incentive here for Ingrid Kristiansen today is the fact that next year these championships are held back in Norway, and I'm sure she'd love nothing more than the chance to defend this title on her own soil.
Brendan, that's a point very well made. Grete Waitz has won this World Championship 5 times. That's incredible. There's a statue of Grete outside Bislett Stadium in Oslo. Ingrid Kristiansen in her life has finished something like 245 times in 2nd place behind Grete, and she wants all of those crowns that Grete had.
Well, she's only got the hill for one last time as she digs in deep, and Angela Tooby, who's not actually giving it away, she's still there, she's snapping at her heel, she's only 20 metres behind, and there's still a kilometre of the race to go. It's the hill for the last time that usually decides the fate of races here at Ellerslie.
And Ingrid has said, in fact, that she doesn't really very much like running on hills. In 1 or 2 races in the States, she's shown some susceptibility there. So that's why I think she used the flatter section of the course to really put that brake on Angela Tooby, who, if anything, coming from a very hilly area near the Severn Bridge, just near the Welsh border of England, Angela Tooby is a good hill runner and has proven that in the English many other occasions.
Now here's the main,
has in fact got away.
Here's the main bunch of runners, led by the Russian Romanova. Hunter is in there as well, along with number 14, who's making her presence felt for the very first time in the race, and that's Lieve Slegers from Belgium. 1:14
was Albertina Machado from Portugal, who is also a very fast finisher. She ran 2nd behind Ingrid Kristiansen in the World 15-kilometer World Championships last year in Monaco. A very, very strong runner from Portugal. There's Christine McMeekin, who's been training at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma, with Dick Weiss, the coach there.
And she looks as if she's actually threading her way through this field. She's probably into the top 20 now. She has finished 7th in this race, so she'd be looking for, at least I imagine, a top 20 finish. But it's Ingrid Kristiansen with all the hard work behind her now. She's finished with the hills. She's back on the flat. She's 500 metres from home. She looks around and sees Angela Tooby still hanging on to her. But the gap, I suspect, as a result of the hill for the last time, has started to widen. Tooby hasn't handled it as well as the strong. And remember, Ingrid Kristiansen, a former World Championship cross-country skier, so she knows what tough racing is all about. Then there's a really good race going on for 3rd place, and moving into contention is Sergent for the first time.
Did you see that? She moved right up there. That, just like we said, I think she's probably made her move too late for the victory, but she could be in easily from maybe a good 3rd and maybe 2nd place.
Yeah, and she was 3rd 2 years ago, so she wasn't totally unknown when she came through and got the victory last year. It looks as if that could be the place she gets today, and Angela Tooby is very tired.
But it's all Ingrid Kristiansen. She was very much the favourite here when the race started, and she's lived up to her favouritism, and she has completely destroyed this field with a beautifully judged race. Coming down the home straight with just over 400 metres of the race to go, and this elusive World Cross Country Championship title now near at hand for 32-year-old Kristiansen.
Ingrid Kristiansen, of course, is making her major bid for a gold medal in the Olympic Games, as well as that 2:20 barrier. Angela Tooby
quite remarkable to think that this woman won the world 15K road title in Adelaide a week ago, and many of us thought that could she have really recovered from such a tough race in such a short space of time? Well, she's left no doubt about her abilities today. She runs away from the best in the world.
I think one of the most remarkable things about Ingrid is the fact that she's also a very good role model. She's proved that you can be a mother very successfully and be a top champion. In fact, 9 months after delivering a baby boy, she set a world record in the marathon distance. That baby is now 5 years old, and that's one reason why she trains on a treadmill, so she can watch him while she trains.
So she has her husband and her 4-year-old son here in the crowd watching her this afternoon, so she's not short of family support as she comes down the last 200 metres out of the shadows of Greta Bates and into the immortality of her own comes Ingrid Kristiansen, third in 1987, 1985, fourth in 1984, but most certainly first in 1988 and world champion for the next 12 months, Ingrid Kristiansen of Norway. So along with her 3 world records, she adds yet another marvellous string to her bow, the world cross-country champion. Angela Tooby, who's hung on gamely for second place. And it's a very fine run from Angela Tooby, 8th.
But look who's in third. It's Annette Sergent once again with a fast finish to get that wonderful third place.
Sergent of psychology coming through in third, and a great race here for 4th place.
It's Lynn Jennings on the left, and she takes it from Albertina from Portugal.
And then the 2 Russians coming home in 6th or 7th place. Now let's keep an eye open for Christine McMeekin. There's Jill Hunter Slegers from Belgium. And here comes number 9. Christine McMeekin, easily the first New Zealander. She has about 20 metres to go. Just looking at the number of runners in front of her, she probably would be in about 20th spot. So Christine McMeekin, who's done well, she held her place and made up a few positions on the last lap.
And Jackie Goodman.
And Jackie Goodman, also from Oklahoma State University, just 20 years of age. What a marvellous run from Jackie Goodman, making her first appearance for New Zealand, second New Zealander home. She certainly justified her selection. Now comes Barbara Moore. She's the 3rd New Zealander. And I think I can see Lesley Graham at the top of the picture there. So they'll be the 4 New Zealanders that would count. Goodman, McMeekin, Barbara Moore and Lesley Graham in the black uniform, who won the New Zealand trial here a month ago. They will be the 4 New Zealanders who will count towards the New Zealand team trial. That's not a bad effort, Roger.
There's Mary O'Connor just now finishing.
In fact, I think the New Zealand women may well finish in the top 6 based on what we've seen.
Yeah, I think they'll make the top. The Americans didn't seem to have done so well. Jennings was well back, and the Americans were just scattered back through that group. I think the Russians were up there, Brendan, but the New Zealanders are likely to have got 4th to 6th place.
All in a day's work for Ingrid Kristiansen as these runners continue to spill across the line, and some of them clearly showing the effects probably of the humidity. And many of these runners from Europe have complained about the difficulty they've had adjusting to the humidity here in Auckland, and there's a very graphic example of that in the form of number 40, Satu Lavila from Finland. It's not surprising that she's finding the going pretty tough in this heat from where she's come from. One of the Australians coming home, and you would almost think this is the end of a marathon. In fact, it looks rather like the end of the Ironman triathlon that was held here on the streets of Auckland last week. Some of these runners look totally exhausted after this just 20-minute run, but it was pretty tough. And there's Christine McMeekin, Lesley Graham, the 1st and 4th finisher for New Zealand, Barbara Moore, who came home 3rd in her 5th World Cross Country Championship. So although it wasn't the best start we saw from the New Zealanders, they finished pretty well.
I suspect they did, in fact, make some progress in the course of the race, especially McMeekin and Jackie Goodman. I think they moved through following the precedent in 1986, and I suspect they might well have made something like 3rd to 5th place. You can see some of the effects of this race. Although it's a short distance, it's still a very tiring one with the soft grass, with the effect of the hill, and runners who put absolutely everything into trying to stay with a world-class field.
Well, Ingrid Kristiansen, I understand, Catherine, is actually going to run the London Marathon in a couple of weeks.
That's right, Brendan. As I said before, she's looking to break that magic 2-hour, 20-minute barrier. She feels that that will really put her into the ranks of the immortals. And then, of course, after that, she wants to go for the gold medal in the Olympic Games, which, what a schedule she's had. You know, she was injured all last year with a bad foot injury.
She does a lot of racing, doesn't she?
She really is. She's been down here in the southern hemisphere, of course, running and getting used to the warmer weather, which is good. She I think, must be getting a little tired of that treadmill. At least she's taken off her gloves. I guess she stopped sweating, and then she doesn't have to worry about wiping her brow.
Okay, let's go back and just have a look in slow motion at the remarkable strength and style of Ingrid Kristiansen.
Strength, style and concentration, I think. We talked about that expression of apparent pain on her face. It's rather the determination of somebody really bidding for another title and at the completion of a magnificent run of championships over the last 12 months. The World 10,000 Championship, the World Road Race Championship, and now coming for the one that had eluded her for the last 5 years, the World Cross Country Championship, won here at Ellerslie Racecourse. And the relief begins to cross her face, and a really quite modest victory wave from Ingrid Kristiansen as she crosses the line for the World Cross Country title.
A buoyant person. She's lively and she's fun. She loves running. She loves the traveling associated with it. Thoroughly a nice person and not at all single-minded. As intense as she is and about her running, she really, really has a lot of other activities in her life.
So the excitement starts to subside here at the Ellerslie Racecourse as our attention now reverts to the start of the, I guess, the feature race of the day, the men's event, which is still 30 minutes away, as some of the back markers are still coming down the home straight to complete their 8,000-metre journey, as Ingrid Kristiansen, who certainly doesn't look to be showing any effects at all of this very tough race that she's had, and she's getting a marvellous reception from the crowd here. This is the sort of reception that's usually reserved for a horse called Bone Crusher.
Ingrid is used to this kind of reception. I watched her run in the Bislett Games in Oslo, and when she went around the stadium, the crowd just adored her.
That's her husband there with her, and he's only got time for a race as she makes her way up to the top of the bird cage, when she's down there with Philip Leishman, and if we're lucky we might, just a few moments' time, get a word or two from the 1988 World Cross Country Champion, Phil.
And with me is Ingrid Kristiansen. Congratulations, Ingrid. Were you surprised that Angela Tooby went so quick early?
No, I was sure she would try it from the beginning, because she's always, like me, a front runner, so she wants to be in the front from the beginning.
What were your tactics for the race?
I plan to take it easy for the first half lap, one lap, and then try to start working. So, because I ran the 15K last Sunday, so I feel I was a little tired before the race, and I thought that was important to take it a little bit easy from the beginning.
Were you very confident about today's race?
Yes, I feel I tried to win this race from several times and never get it, so I'm very pleased today.
What does it mean to Ingrid Kristiansen, World Cross Country Championship?
It's always nice to win a World Championship, so this means a lot for me this year. And it's nice to win a championship and building up for the Olympics, so it's always nice.
Where to now for you?
What?
Where do you go from here now? What's your next competition?
I go home to Norway in 2 days and then stay in Norway before preparing for the London Marathon. So my next competition will be London the 17th of April.
I'm sure that the many viewers watching today, the many people here at Ellerslie will remember the day that Ingrid Kristiansen came to Ellerslie Racecourse in New Zealand. Thank you very much for coming and congratulations.
Thank you.
There we are, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the women's event, and we'll be back in a moment to present the medal to her for winning.
At the World Cross Country Championships for you in the very near future. The men's race due to start this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and after the way the...
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back to the women's race. And very fine performance indeed, coming from 27-year-old Angela Tooby, bronze medalist in the 10,000 metres at the Commonwealth Games in 1986, and a silver medal today in the 1988 World Cross Country Championships.
And in third place from France, last year's winner, Annette Sergent.
And Annette Sergent from France, who was third in 1986, first in 1987, and once again is on the victory dais, this time for the bronze medal. So it's been a very consistent performance over the past 3 years from Sergent, who really didn't feature in the race until the last 1,500 metres when she came with a strong finish, but couldn't catch Ingrid Kristiansen. Norway, Great Britain and France, first, second and third, but we still await the team's title, which is going to be very close between the longest ever cross-country race run for women at the championships, 6,000 metres, 1,000 metres longer than it normally is, won by Kristiansen in a shade over 19 seconds. She was 19 seconds ahead of Angela Tooby at the finish line. Annette Sergent from France third, Lynn Jennings from the USA fourth, Albertina Machado from Portugal fifth place, and the first Russian home was Yelena Romanova in sixth place, and she came home 37 seconds behind Kristiansen.
Now, we understand that Romanova's placing of sixth and the support of her fellow team members has seen the USSR win the team's event from Britain by 9 points. So the USSR from Britain by 9 points. That's very unofficial at the moment. We'll confirm
the flat after the first hill climb. They do a sharp left-hand turn and head back up to the hill, which adds just an extra 400 metres per lap. In all, the men will do 4 3/4 laps, which means 10 hill climbs on this tough, rugged 12,000 metre journey. And that's what it looks like. Always one of the really memorable sights in these cross-country championships is the start, as these men go off at this fantastic pace. Remember, they've got 12,000 metres left. It's a long way to go. It will take them approximately 35 minutes, or the leading runners 35 minutes to complete the journey.
It's a memorable feeling as well, Brendan. It's not just a sight from the stands. When you're in there, the ground literally shakes. You can hear a thundering noise, and you can feel the grass. It's unlike anything on the track. It looks like O'Connor of Ethiopia edging out to the front. And the runners are making an interesting choice at this point, because it's a very wide track they have to run on. If they run on the inside, it's slightly shorter. If they run on the outside, as I found last night when I ran over it, the grass is shorter and it's a firmer run. Salvatore Antibo of Italy is leading.
As expected, there is a sprinkling of Kenyans and Ethiopians across the front of the field as they make their way into the hill for the first time. They've started the climb already. It starts from about 200 metres out, and it gradually steepens as they get closer to it.
And a good start by New Zealander Phil Clode. You can just see his blonde hair with his glasses on, bobbing up and down behind number 127 there. And he's a good start. He's a fast runner. Runs well over 1,500 metres. So that's good tactics for some of our New Zealanders early on in the race. Pat Porter from the United States, two there in third place.
The field is not particularly spread yet, and one thing that one notices about the way the African runners go in this championship is that they tend to suddenly surge through after about the first kilometre. That may happen this time. We'll be looking for the Kenyans. They're not at present showing in front. It's Ethiopia and the United States.
It's the first of the 5 times the field will attack this hill here at Ellerslie. There we see Philip Clode of New Zealand, John Campbell just behind him, and there's Chris Pallone also in the middle of that field. So the 217 runners now making their way across the ridge for 200 metres before they branch out to the right on the first downhill section, and then 200 metres later it's another long hard slog back to the top of the hill.
And you could see Paul Kipkoech right on the outside on the right here make a big move out through the field. He wants to get some running room. One of the big problems early in the race is getting on the inside, getting the shortcuts, not getting pushed to the outside of the course and having to run further than the other runners. Relaxing as you do it so that you get a good view of your track.
And here comes the downhill that I spoke about in the women's race, which can be just as crucial as the uphill part of a cross-country race.
And this will be interesting here because the field, which is very bunched together, has to do a very tight left-hand turn and make their way back up to the hill. So they'll all be jostling for that inside position to cut down the amount of room they must run. And the tall figure of the Australian, number 21, Malcolm Norwood, who we saw win the New Zealand cross-country championship race in Taupo last year, and someone's fallen as things got pretty tight and rugged in that turn. You can see how tight that corner is there as they squeeze through. There's New Zealanders, Rod Dixon there, you can see towards the back of the field running with a couple of other of the New Zealanders. He said he wasn't worried about how fast they went out. He's quite happy just to sit back and wait for the race to develop and see how things pan out. That's Malcolm Norwood, number 21, ranked number 3 in the Australian team behind Robert De Castella. Steve Monaghetti.
And Boniface Mirandi, the leading Kenyan at the minute, who finished third in their trial. That fall at the corner, Brendan, illustrated one important thing about cross-country running, and it'll happen again now.
And if you look to the right of your picture, you'll see one of the, was it a Canadian runner maybe, that looks if he fell. I got a feeling that he didn't stay on his knees for long. He was quickly given a hand by a runner and back up on his feet, but that wouldn't be a very pleasant experience.
An awful lot of jostling, and often the wisest thing to do is to go wide on corners like that and not get blocked on the inside.
So the field on the new part of the course, which we're seeing for the first time, this is back onto the outer track, as it were, of the race course where the men run. They're the only competitors at these World Championships that cover this part of the course, and it brings them back onto the flat. So it adds a further 400 metres to the actual lap circuit, which measures 2,500 metres for the men. 4 3/4 laps for the 12,000 metres, which is the standard cross-country distance for senior men.
One of the decisions that the weaker runners in a race like this have to make is whether to go with the field. It's often the sensible pace for them would be actually off at the back, but because the pace at the front is so fast, nobody wants the embarrassment of being trailed off by 20 or 30 metres, and they tend to stay with the group and in fact run too fast in the early stages. That's the choice they have to make: go with it or try and run your own race. The tall Marty Vainio with a headband just shot through the left of the picture, and Derek Frood also towards the back of this field. He's made his decision. He's going to try and come through in this race.
So already the field starting to string out as the leading bunch of runners come down past the major bulk of the crowd here at the Ellerslie racecourse and into the first obstacle. And this isn't really a very important part of the race because there is only 2 obstacles on each lap, which gives them a total of 8 in all. In Warsaw last year, the men had to clear 2 obstacles, and it remains something of a mystery as to why this traditionally important part of cross-country running doesn't feature more prominently on this course.
It remains a mystery. If I was still running, Brendan, it would be an absolute delight because I always lost yards and yards on the obstacles. But the Kenyans certainly don't let it trouble them. One of the problems, of course, is taking the obstacles from behind because you can't see quite where they're coming when you're behind a big group like this. But it's Kenya, and also don't miss in the middle of that group the tall figure of the Portuguese number 174, Canerio.
So they're coming down to cross the finish line for the first time with 4 complete laps to go. Basically 10 Ks of the journey left, and getting a very good view of things down there is John Walker with Philip Leishman. Phil.
Well, it's almost unbelievable to hear yourself here. It's so loud. The crowd really getting behind them. John, have the Kenyans now made their move?
Well, they're starting to. They realise here there's 12,000 metres, there's 5 laps in this crawling hill, and this really takes it out inside. I think this one's become a little bit more technical, but very good to see the New Zealanders right up there amongst the bunch, and they're running very, very smart.
Bends have never meant terribly much to John Campbell. He's quite happy to take the outside line.
Yeah, well, right, of course, he's just come off a 2:15 marathon back in LA. He had a virus, and it could tell against him a little bit.
Running in a similar
but
position.
He'll give it all he's got, you know, and he'll certainly want to be first New Zealander home.
Marty, of course, well
John
known
Walker.
to New
We'll get more
Zealanders over
comments
many,
from John
many
as the race
years.
progresses.
So back at the top of the field, the leading runners, the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, going through the second obstacle course, or the second obstacle on the course, and they're back where they started from. So they've completed 2,500 metres of the journey, less than 10 Ks to go now, as the rest of the field struggling to keep up with these remarkable African runners. One of the New Zealanders going over. They seem fairly well back in the field at the moment, John Davies.
Yes, some of them have made pretty good starts. John Campbell is up within sort of 60 metres of the leader, which is John Ngugi at the moment. So he's made an excellent start.
Now the field make their way down straight for the second time. Conditions still absolutely perfect here for cross-country running. I suppose, Roger, we traditionally associate mud, slush, snow and sleet with cross-country running, but in recent years it's become more basically of track racing on grass, isn't it?
Well, it's always been a winter sport, and for the last few years the World Championship has been run in some quite heavy conditions, but sometimes, of course, it's been run in hot countries. It's been in Morocco. When New Zealand won the world title in 1975, it was on a hot sandy racecourse in Rabat in Morocco. It's been in Tunis, it's been in Morocco before that. It's not always in the slush, but characteristically, of course, it evolved in England as essentially a winter sport across whatever country happened to lie in your way. Here we've got a fine and beautiful course, but it's not exactly a heavy one.
So coming into the hill for the second time, with approximately 3 kilometres of the race gone, number 149, the defending champion, John Ngugi, this 25-year-old soldier from Kenya, the man who's won it for the past 2 today, seeking to become only the third athlete in the 85-year history of the International Cross-Country Championships to win it 3 years in a row. There he is, number 149, leading the field into the hill for the second time. Alongside of him is compatriot number 146, Boniface Morandi, and the first Ethiopian there, number 63, Abibi Mekinen.
And the pace, Brendan, folks, is a real cracker, going through just over 8:30 for the 3K mark. And isn't it interesting to note how similar this race is starting to look to the junior race, with the Kenyans really starting to dominate. But look out for the black singlets of New Zealand. There's, coming up the hill now, Phil Clode. There's Phil, number 162, who won the trial so decisively here. There's Chris Pallone, number 166, Pallone, running very much on what you could call his home course, an Aucklander by heart.
It's John Maloney, Derek Frood, and the field now has spread over 200 metres of this course. Runners still coming into the bottom of the hill, while at the top of the field, the Kenyans are making their way down the hill to the flat. John Ngugi, and there we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's no question about who's leading in the teams race at the moment. The Kenyans have got the double, the individual and the teams race under control, but there's an awful long way to go in this World Championship race.
Yeah, there's an awful long way to go, but in fact, if a runner like Pat Porter, the American, you can just see taking the corner, and Canario, the Portuguese, have decided that they can't go with this speed, then obviously the Kenyans are really putting pressure on. We've got world-class athletes being dropped off by this group. The Kenyans are extraordinarily dominant. A very good look at them as they begin the second of the hills on this lap. And it's still the defending champion, John Ngugi, leading from the Ethiopian marathon runner, Abibi Mekinen.
Fascinating aspect about the Kenyans is that they've only started running in the World Championships in the 1980s, and they've had a remarkable and profound effect on it since they first appeared in 1981. They've never finished worse than fourth in the teams event, have won it for the past 2 years, have finished second on another 2 occasions and third on a couple of occasions as well. It's an absolutely remarkable effort, and their only real opposition in recent years has been the Ethiopians, and they've had some real epic battles between these two countries for the teams title. But at the moment, in 1988, in this race, it's the Kenyans well and truly in control.
Brendan, if there's an answer to that query as to just why they came through at that time, it could lie, as it did with New Zealand with Arthur Lydiard, in the identity of a national coach. Michael Koskei. Oh, we're looking now at Stefano May, I think, who's in trouble at the side of the course. That's the European 5,000 metre champion, and somebody who is expected to be very well up. A tall and genial figure, but he doesn't look very genial at this moment.
And it seems that a lot of these European runners, we saw it at the end of the women's race, may be just having difficulty with the humidity here in Auckland, which they just wouldn't have had time to adjust to. But it doesn't seem to be any problems at all for the Africans, who have come down from 8,000 feet from the high plains of the Rift Valley under the shadow of Mount Kenya onto the sea level humidity here of the Ellerslie racecourse. But they're such gifted runners, they seem quite easy to be able to adjust to any conditions.
And that giftedness and the advantages of altitude have, as I was saying before we saw Stefano May, been added to by the skill of Michael Koskei, their national coach, who was appointed in 1985 with all that he'd learned at Washington State University, where he was a runner contemporary with Henry Ronner.
So they come into the home straight for the second time, and you could be forgiven for thinking this is the African cross-country championships, because the first 6 runners we see all come from Africa, 5 Kenyans and an Ethiopian, and the rest of the world struggling to hang on. A remarkable sight. And as John Davis, absolutely a repeat, colour for colour, singlet for singlet, from what we saw in the junior race an hour ago.
I think these guys are absolutely wonderful to watch. Just look at the effortlessness that this man has. John Ngugi, a truly outstanding world champion. It's a bit early in the race, but look, no effort at all. He's got this long, loping stride, quite unusual compared with his other African compatriots who sort of chop their stride a little bit. But Ngugi just bounces along, lopes along, has wonderful cadence. But the 2 men behind him are going to be good and hang on there. Paul Kipkoech, I think he's the guy in 3rd place, who's the world 10,000 metre champion. Watch for a fast finish from him.
And as we said, 5 of us contestants are there in the uniform on their side. There's the
So the leading runners coming to the 5K or the 5,000 metre mark. It's 5 Kenyans in the first 6, and the only one to break that is Abibi Mekinen, the Ethiopian. There he is in the red and the green. a very good record in this race. He's the number 2 Ethiopian here, 24 years of age. He too a soldier, second to Ngugi last year.
John Campbell leading the New Zealand effort now by the look of it. Rod Dixon right in behind him. Here they come, coming through.
And great runners in this group. You can see the Portuguese quite prominent. The white singlet with the... And there's the leading British runner, Eamon Martin. And Salvatore Antibo, the Italian.
And there's Malcolm Norwood, the second Australian.
Steve Binns, the short figure in the British uniform. That's the white with the red and blue panels. And Rob De Castella in the red and green. And John Campbell, the leading New Zealander, coming through in probably about 30th place, I think, John.
There's Rod Dixon, Ken Maloney, another one of the Australians. Part of this field of 217 runners from 36 countries. There's Chris Tobin, Philip Claude, John Bowden, Chris Pallone.
Yeah, Ken Maloney and...
14:15 through the 5K. That's 28:30 10K pace, and really that's tough because our New Zealand runners, for instance, can't run 28:30 for a 10K on a track. It's absolutely hot out in front.
And it's all, the pace is being set by this man, this remarkable twice world champion, John Ngugi, on target to make it 3 in a row. We'll be back in just a moment. In this championship event at Warsaw last year are leading the race again, John Ngugi and his compatriot Paul Kipkoech, first and second as they make their way through the hill section for the 3rd time. Let's catch up with John Walker down on the track with Philip Leishman.
Well, John, we saw them go through that second lap time, and it was really then that the Kenyans were starting to apply the pressure on this race.
Basically what we're seeing is a type of race that we saw last year's cross country when Ngugi and Kipkoech dominated right from the very beginning. They basically ran as pairs last year and made sure they won it as a team's race. We're seeing the same thing happen here again, and I still believe Kipkoech will win.
I know it's cross country. You were somewhat staggered by that 3K time when you saw it go through.
They're moving terribly fast. I think if you put it back into perspective, Rod Dixon ran a 3K race down in Christchurch before Christmas in 8:20. They went through only 9 seconds slower over the country with another 7K to go. So that puts it back into perspective.
So Kenyans 1-2?
Certainly will be.
Mind-boggling stuff from these two Africans, John Ngugi and Paul Kipkoech. Both have similar backgrounds but come from different tribes. Kipkoech is a Nandi and his compatriot Ngugi is from the Kikuyu tribe, and despite being world champions, both work for a good part of the year. Each has his own small farm where he grows his maize, his vegetable, and some cattle, and will sometimes go for many weeks without training and just work on their farms, which is so physically demanding that doesn't cause them to lose any of their fitness. Remarkable men, remarkable athletes, and we're seeing an example of just why the Kenyans were such a force at the World Track and Field Championships in Africa in Rome last year, and seem certain to pick up a sack full of medals at Seoul later this year. And then the Ethiopian hanging on to the 2 Kenyans in 3rd place. These pictures could just about have been lifted from the videotape we saw of the Warsaw Championship race 12 months ago. Ngugi and Kipkoech. Ngugi is the one in front, the man who won it, and has won it for the last 2 years, and Paul Kipkoech, the man who destroyed the best 10,000 metre runners in the world in the final at the Rome World Championships last year.
And if we're looking at last year's cross-country championship as a rerun, we had really one of the most fantastically close finishes of all time, and everybody thought Kipkoech had got it until Ngugi flung himself across the line and took it. But Ngugi now must be conscious of that very fast last 5,000 metres that John Walker referred to, that Kipkoech ran to completely decimate the World Championship 10,000 metre field in Rome.
Coming to the barrier, which is positioned at the start of the home straight. Crowd of 10, 15,000 people here giving plenty of support and appreciation to the performance of these 2 Kenyans, Ngugi and Kipkoech. Both soldiers, 24 and 25 years of age respectively, and seem certain to dominate world cross-country running and longer distance running for many years. Ngugi, who's a 3:37 1500 metre man, but over the longer distances, the better times belong to Kipkoech. And a gap of about 50 or 60 metres back to all sorts of runners now. They're lapping, in fact, one of the back markers. 7Ks of the 12,000 metre journey gone. And they've gone through the 7Ks in just a shade over 20 minutes, past the finish line, with 2 laps to go.
And amazing that they're really running twice as fast as some of these other runners, that they can have lapped them so soon in a race like this when the lap is so big.
Just gets a little tough once the finish line as the course starts to climb again to a point which is nearly as high as it is over the back straight at the top of the hill.
Brendan, you can see that the footing has improved somewhat as a result of the runners going around and around this in the course of the afternoon. The juniors, the women, now the seniors on. They've got quite a firm little track there around the inside on this bend, but as they come out of this bend and go up the straight, which they started on towards the hill, they have to make a choice between going to the inside, where it's shorter, and to the outside, where it's firmer, but longer.
This is the race that's going on for third place. Number 146, who's Boniface Morandi, and number 63, the Ethiopian Bibi McKinnon. It's the magnificent sight from the top of a high-rise building, a mile or so from the Ellerslie racecourse, looking down at this capacity crowd at the two grandstands and the huge number of people along the home straight, watching this huge field of 217 runners make their way through this championship race.
Now, John Campbell's just gone through the start-finish line, and he's about 150 metres behind this man, and I would say that he's running well up in the top 40 at the moment. If he can hold that position, it will be an excellent run. But just look at the relaxation of this man. I know Roger Robinson doesn't like me talking about it, but look at this fellow's lower lip. And that's what I talk about with these chaps. They just have absolutely, totally relaxed through their face and neck.
What I always prefer to look at, John, is the lovely loping action of the legs on both of them. That's where it all happens, and they're handling this still somewhat rough underfoot ground absolutely beautifully.
And we've just officially heard from our men down on the start-finish line that the leading New Zealanders are, in fact, John Campbell, who's in 66th place, and the second New Zealander, who is in 80th place, who I think might have been Philip Claude. And so they still have some work to do. The feeling in the New Zealand camp was that if they could get a runner in the first 50, it wouldn't represent too bad an effort. Well, John Campbell, he's not far away. The difference between 50th and 66th in a race like this is probably only going to be a couple of seconds.
Oh, it could be very little, but Campbell may have gone off a bit too fast, and he's still got a long way to run. He could pay the price for that. Phil Claude seems to be coming through, and I also caught a glimpse of Chris Tobin, considerably further up than on the previous lap. I think he's making progress.
But it all looks pretty simple stuff for these fellows out in front, showing no signs at all of fatigue, despite the fact they're into this hill for the fourth time, running at this absolutely blistering speed. Ngugi and Kipkoech through the first hill climb, across the ridge. And is this a little break we're seeing here? And there's a really very good race going on for third place, but it's basically between the Kenyans and number 63, Bibi McKinnon.
And the man on the right, number 145, he's just got out of the picture. It's a 41 Kenyan. They certainly cover the full range. It's a Bibi McKinnon, the Ethiopian, who finished second 2 years ago.
And John Ngugi, who's put 4 or 5 metres on Paul Kipkoech. John Davies, is that significant at that stage of the race, or is it still too early?
It's significant, all right. Ngugi knows that Kipkoech has a terribly fast finish. At the World Championship 10,000 metres, Kipkoech ran the last 5,000 in 13:25, which is a blistering pace that any New Zealander would just love to run for 5K. Ngugi knows that, and he's a strong man. You can tell by the way he runs. He lopes along, he's got that long stride. He's the sort of bloke that revels in the tougher conditions of cross-country. And Kipkoech, if you look at him, he bounces much more upright, punches with his arms a little bit more, drives a little bit more, and you can see he's got that frown on his face. Up a little bit, and he's trying to hang on there to Ngugi. But this man certainly looks like he's going to be another champion.
And it's quite a remarkable comeback, because since he won this title last year, he had knee surgery only a little before Christmas, and came back very quickly from that to start to perform quite well in some cross-country races in Europe, getting 4th and 5th places, until on the 17th of January he hit the front again for the first time in San Sebastian in Spain, and that's where he stayed since then. John Ngugi.
Yes, the news with Ngugi over the last couple of months has really been all rather pessimistic. He had his cyst removed surgically from behind his knee. He complained of the fact that he was having difficulty breathing when he arrived here in New Zealand, and he could only manage a 3rd place in the Kenyan trial. But today he's put it all together, and he's in control of this race at the moment. John Ngugi, the man, as we said, 25 years of age. He's won it for the past 2 years. Yes. And just look at the gap that is starting to open out between him and his compatriot Kipkoech, and that is significant now. It's the best part of still is the best part of 3 kilometres of the race to go, but it's going to be very tough for Kipkoech from there. So we could be in for a most exciting finish. It'll probably be academic who was first and who was second, because it'll certainly go to Kenya by the look of it.
10,000 metres with a withering 30 minutes 25 seconds final 5K.
John Ngugi coming into the home straight with just over 1 complete lap to go in this 12,000 metre journey, and he now has a significant 30-metre gap over his compatriot Paul Kipkoech.
150 metres from the hurdle.
And Miranda hanging on to third place from the 24-year-old Ethiopian Mekinen. The Ethiopians just haven't been the force that we expected them to be. You can only ponder about the effects that long journey has had on the Ethiopian team compared to the Kenyans, who've been here for the best part of a week and have had the opportunity to acclimatise and settle in nicely to the Auckland conditions, and it seems to be paying dividends for them today, Roger.
Yeah, I asked the Ethiopian team coach why they did that, and he said simply, oh, they get tired, but it doesn't affect their running. Well, perhaps it is affecting their running today.
And it's still number 63.
Morandi, then number 145, the veteran Koskei, third, fourth and fifth at the moment. But coming across the start-finish line with 1 lap to go, 2,500 metres of the journey left, John Ngugi, who's leading this field by the best part now with 50 metres from Paul Kipkoech. So can the 1,000-metre world champion pull back this big lead over the last 2.5 Ks? Ngugi, as he continues to lap some of the slower runners in the field. This is Kipkoech, 25 years of age. Second in 1987, second in 1985, and he may well have to settle for second place again in 1988. So we've seen the first half dozen runners go past the finish line. They now have less than 1 lap to go. Here's John Walker talking to Philip Leishman.
Well, 5 of those runners are Kenyans, John Walker, and that man in front looks as though he's going for a unique treble.
If he does win the treble, and it certainly looks like he's going to, it would be a unique treble, because to win 3 world cross countries against the best athletes in the world, and they're all here today, you can't say any more. And the Kenyans are certainly run a great teams race as well, and it looks like they're going to win.
Is there any chance that he could stop now with even that big advantage?
I wouldn't think so, and Kipkoech seems to, though he's having a little bit of trouble. Kipkoech won the Kenyan trial, but he's certainly not getting anywhere near Ngugi at the moment.
Okay, John, well, that's the feeling here at the finish.
And look at that remarkable time for the 10Ks of 28 minutes and 43 seconds. And at the National Championships in Hamilton last week, or the week before, where 6 of the New Zealand team ran in the 10Ks on the track, and they didn't get to within a minute of that time at the end of the race. And a big applause here for John Campbell as he goes past the finish line. And we estimate that he's made up about 15 or maybe even 20 places on the last lap. We're sure he's inside the first 50 at the moment. We'll confirm that in just a moment.
He's actually in 41st place. I counted him as he came through. It's actually a tremendous run by John Campbell. And he passed 2 runners as he came down the home straight. So he knows that this last lap is going to be crucial. He's just going past someone else again. Good running by John Campbell.
Campbell first ran for New Zealand in 1969, then had a period away from top-class athletics and came back as a 35-year-old and is now producing this kind of quality of performance. He ran badly a couple of years ago in the World Championship, 4 years ago that is, and now he's really back in this sort of form. But out in front, it's the Kenyan farmer going for his 3rd title, which would in fact be unique since this race became an official World Championship. In the days that it was the International Cross Country Union Championship, it was won 3 times by runners like Gaston Rollins, but has never been won more than twice by anybody since 1973 when it became an IAAF world event. John Ngugi is going to run into history.
He's at the top of the hill for the last time. He has about a kilometre of the journey left. And in second place, Paul Kipkoech.
Come on, Paul. Go by, Paul.
Kenyans repeating their finish from last year, but the big difference is where they went across the line last year virtually together, only a second separated them at the end of 12,000 metres. Today the distance is more like 10 seconds, and it's Kenyans holding third and fourth place. Koskei, number 145, followed by Miranda, number 146. So it's Kenyans first, second, third and fourth at the moment.
Yeah, and that runner, Kipkoech Koskei, 145, who's leading. He's shown on the program as 37 years old, though he told me that he's 41 because he had to drop out of school for 4 years. Rob de Castella shuffling along there. There's the effect of the Tokyo Marathon. It looks as if Rob may not quite make it, though a man of his kind of toughness is, I think, going to finish.
That's a sad sight as far as Australia is concerned, and it will have dealt a severe blow to their team's chances. There's John Ngugi. Just look at him loping along with this magnificent stride, avoiding all the slow traffic as he checks on where the nearest runners are, but he's got nothing to worry about. He would literally have to fall over to lose as he threads his way through the Fijians. He's unconcerned about the traffic. Ngugi, who's really specialised in cross-country running. He could only manage 12th place in the 5,000 metres at the World Championships on the track last year, but when you get him on the grass and the open spaces and the rolling landscape, he's in a class of his own. Kipkoech, more versatile of the two, got a very good record on the track and is the world's most prominent 10,000 metre runner at the moment. And Robert de Castella, who's had enough, or is he going to continue? I think he's pulled out, by the way. He was running on the other side of the track. And as the battle continues for third place between the two Kenyans, so they're first, second, third and fourth, and I'm pretty sure that's never happened before.
145, Kipkoech Koskei ran in the 5,000 metres when Dick Quack set his world record in 1977. He was telling me this and regards Quacks as a friend and something of a lucky token.
Kipkoech looking ahead at the sight of John Ngugi, who's just about disappeared out of sight. Ngugi about to hit this long home straight with just 500 metres of the race to go, and he's completely taken the world apart in this race this afternoon. And as Roger Robertson said, is now just 500 metres away from history. We've got to go right back to the 1930s to find the only other occasion when a man has won this race 3 years in a row, an Englishman by the name of Holden. In those days, of course, it was known as the International Cross Country Championship. He won it in 1933, 34 and 35, and no one has strung three together in successive years since then.
And let's realise that it's not done by some kind of mystical Kenyan magic. Altitude obviously good coaching is an advantage, but this is a man who also trains very hard. He does 3 workouts a day on 4 days a week. He runs 28 kilometres. It's not just done on some kind of natural relaxation. It's work like everything else in this great sport of cross-country running. Brendan.
200 metres of the race left for the 25-year-old soldier in the Kenyan Army, John Ngugi, who has 2 goals in 1988, the World Cross Country Championships in Ellerslie and the 5,000 metres in Seoul later this year. Well, he's got one of them in the bag, and I have a suspicion, a strong suspicion, we'll be seeing him too feature prominently in that 5,000 metre final at Seoul in 6 months' time. An absolutely magnificent display of aggressive front-running tactics from this beautiful athlete. His strong, loping stride carrying him to victory in the World Cross Country Championships, the hardest race in the world to win, and he's won it 3 years in a row. And a distant second, as he was last year, for the 3rd time in recent years, Paul Kipkoech has to settle for the silver medal, but he's done a splendid job for his team as well, and between the two of them, they virtually assured Kenya, most certainly, of the team's title in 1988. And favourite of Roger Robinson, the 41-year-old Kipkoech Koskei coming home in 3rd place. What a magnificent run for a 41-year-old. Goodness gracious me, where do these fellows come from? And it's Kenya going to make it 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. There's a great battle going on for 5th place. That's the 4th Kenyan runner and the 4th runner home. But Mekinen is going to deprive Kenya of the first 5. He comes home in 5th place. But Kenya take the next place, number 151, Moses Tainui, the youngest member of the Kenyan team. Still these red shirts, they're everywhere.
Brendan, this is unbelievable. This really, you have to go back to 1903, I think, to get a sweep like this when England had the first 8 home. That running across in those days only against Scotland and France and Wales. This is quite phenomenal to get Kenyans with, I think it's now 8 members in the first 9 or 10 finishes.
Well, John Davies, have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, it's absolutely amazing, but it's nice to see Paul Kipkoech, who was 3rd last year, coming in at the back of those Africans.
And Roger Hackney of England just staggering across the line. And then the first Irishman, they told me they had a good chance of making the first 6.
But there really were 2 races here today, the Africans and the Europeans. As we keep our eye peeled for the first New Zealander, it was John Campbell. We had him in about 43rd place. And we can hear the roar of the crowd, so he's not far away. In fact, here he comes now. He's got about 50 metres to go. He's got 3 runners which he might catch, but I think he'll come across the line all alone on his own. It's really hard to say, but we imagine he's in the first 50.
He's in about 25th place, I've estimated, Brendan, which is an absolutely brilliant run. 36, we had somebody else doing a better count than me, which is a wonderful performance by John Campbell.
And a 39-year-old, if it wasn't for Koskei in the field, John Campbell's run would be something of a record for all our older viewers.
And Panetta, something of a surprise, the world steeplechase champion and 2nd in the 10,000 metres, could only manage 51st place. So obviously the humidity has really had its effect on some of these European runners. Chris Pallone, is he the 2nd New Zealander? I think he might be.
Yes, he is.
And there's John Bowden there as well. Pallone, 73rd for Chris Pallone. That's a great performance. 76th for John Bowden.
And a great performance by Bowden, who was brought into the team with the withdrawal of one of the runners into the first emergency. Here's Tom Burney.
Tom Burney, who'd come home in the 80s. And
Philip Claude, Brendan.
Claude, who's in 93rd place. So the New Zealanders, there was some talk that they wouldn't get any in the first 100. And Chris Tobin as well. So they've got at least 6 in the first 100. And it'll be interesting to see where they finished and see if they can improve on their showing of 14th place from last year.
Well, 6 places in the first 100 is the best performance that we've had from this men's team for many years, and I'm sure everybody will be delighted that they did come up and get those sort of placings.
And here's Rod Dixon, just coming through, just behind Derek Frood, who was through about 6 places before. Rod Dixon has really felt the pace, but for a man who got 3rd place in 1973, that's not a bad record for longevity.
But his body's collapse and utter exhaustion and dehydration at the finish line, John Ngugi just makes his way without any difficulty at all back to the changing room. It's the man who's won it and has led Kenya to the team's title for the 3rd year in a row. Still, this huge field of over 200 runners spill across the finish line. So repeating the news that John Campbell was the first New Zealander to finish unofficially in about 36th position, which is a vast improvement on his position of 242nd, I think it was, the last time he ran at the World Championships 2 years ago.
We've got just an unofficial count of Kenya in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th and 7th places, with non-scorers in 8th and 9th as well. A quite phenomenal performance, with Ethiopia looking as if they probably got 2nd place with 5, 10, 11 and then another one perhaps about 63. But we're now seeing the slow motion replay of the great John Ngugi coming through the 3rd year, his 3rd successive world cross-country title, stretching his legs out, this magnificent stride which he has, and the jubilation as he runs into history, the first man to win this title 3 times and the first man to win the cross-country title 3 successive times since the 1930s.
And he'll be pretty pleased, Roger. It's the fastest time he's done in his 3 titles. So the course at Ellerslie proved that it was excellent, and this man took total advantage of it.
John Ngugi being crowded by the world's press, photographers and television crews from all around the world. 100 million people around the world are watching this telecast this afternoon, and I'm sure they have been as impressed with this extraordinary performance by Ngugi as everyone here has at Ellerslie. It's been a very emotional afternoon. There's been tremendous crowd support, not just for the New Zealanders, but for this very knowledgeable crowd here who've appreciated what they've seen here. One of the truly great performances ever. in a race meeting at New Zealand?
Certainly knowledgeable, Brendan, I think, because every harrier from within 300 miles is here, I think, and many of them are working as officials. If you look at the finishing chutes, you can see, in fact, half the New Zealand team that won the world title in 1975 working this time as finish chute officials. Runners as great as Brian Rose and Dave Searle.
John Ngugi, and just repeating the news, he went through the 10 Ks in 28 minutes and 43 seconds. How'd you like to have an athlete like that, John Davies?
I've just decided, actually, Brendan, that I'm going to go to Kenya and do some coaching. I think, I'm not sure that you can go wrong with these sorts of chaps.
I'd imagine it'd be pretty easy over there, would it?
Well, I wouldn't say it was easy, but I think you've got to give credit to the system that they have. And it's interesting, I was talking to their coach about how they train and how they chose this team. And what they did, they took them into a squad, and they didn't name this team until something like 2